Hello. Today is December the 1st, 2021. I know it's hard to believe, isn't it? We're here already, and we are here to present a new show for you today, How Taxonomy Powers Knowledge Centers. So if you're here for this show, and that's what you expect, you're in the right place. My name is Scott Abel, and I'll be your guide for today's show. I'm going to quickly run through a couple of housekeeping items, introduce you to the presenters, and let them tackle the topic of today's show. All right, a few things about this webinar. First, you don't have to worry about having access to your camera or microphone because we can't see or hear you. So no worries about muting or worrying about anything in your background. Rest assured, that's not an issue. One other thing, excuse me, you can't chat with us, which means that we do have a little way for you to communicate with us, but it's not two-way. So what does that mean? On today's show, you can actually ask a question by clicking the Ask a Questions tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. Doing that will open a little text-based window, which will allow you to type in a question and send it along to us. Keep in mind, we won't be able to text you back an answer, and we won't know who you are. So if you'd like us to know your name, please add your name to the end of the comment so we can address you by your name when we answer the question. Also, there's all kinds of additional content in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. Clicking the attachments button will open a document repository in which we've stored some troubleshooting information in case you have any problems with today's technology, BrightTalk audio or video challenges. There's also information from the sponsor of today's show, Zoomin Software, as well as information about the two presenters on today's show. So definitely check out the attachments section whenever you've got a moment during the show. All right, let's get this show underway. First, we've got two presenters today, and I'm going to let them hog up the bulk of the time. So I'm going to quickly bring them on and make sure we can hear and hear from them, and then we'll go ahead and on with the show. All right, first guest, Amy, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Amy, excellent. I can hear you loud and clear, and that means that the technology gods are working in our favor today. So thank you for joining us here today. Can you tell the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do at Zoomin Software?
Yeah, so I am a customer success manager. I recently became a customer success manager at Zoomin maybe 4 or 6 months ago. I am formerly a doc manager and a tech writer. So I've been working in documentation for quite some time. I've worked at companies like VMware, ServiceNow. ServiceNow is where I got to know Zoomin and helped bring Zoomin on board there. And yeah, I'm very passionate about tech docs, and I decided to try being a customer success manager to help other customers, other companies have success with their docs.
Excellent. And I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I think it makes sense for you to introduce the next person who's one of your customers, I believe, who's a guest. And if you would do so and ask her a little bit about her connection to the topic, then we'll drive right into the show.
Sure. Yeah, so Amanda is from Hunter Douglas, and she's been working with us at Zoomin. Her team has been trying out our Zoomin for Salesforce application and putting their content from DITA into the Zoomin platform. So Amanda and I have been working together for the last couple of months on this project. And Amanda, how big is your team at Hunter Douglas?
Yeah, hi everybody. So I have a team of about 5 full-time employees, looking to expand to 6. And our need for Zoomin was to really look for how can we quickly and efficiently publish our dealer content using XML, and that's how I met Amy.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think you're located in Colorado, right? Your company's in Colorado?
Yeah, so Hunter Douglas is headquartered out of Pearl River, New York, but I work at the Broomfield, Colorado site. We do manufacturing of high-end luxury window coverings.
Okay.
Excellent.
Awesome.
All right. Well, I know we've got a lot of content to cover today, so I'm going to put myself on mute and jump into the background and allow the two of you to drive forward our presentation today. Audience members who may have just joined us, please know that you can ask a question at any time by using the Ask a Question tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. Clicking on that will open up a little text-based window into which you can text a question to us. Don't forget to add your name if you'd like us to respond to the question verbally on the show using your name. All right. Why don't you take it away, Amy and Amanda?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we've already been introduced, so I'm just going to zoom by this. Today, we're going to talk to you about building a global taxonomy. That might mean a little bit different things to different people, but we're going to make it give you an example of Amanda's journey at Hunter Douglas with her team, what challenges she faced, and how that can sort of apply. You can take away some of the things that might apply to your own journey as you're setting off. She's going to talk about how, she might have been better prepared and how you might prepare, and also her experience with just what to consider before sitting down with that blank page. The first time we all sat down together, Amanda and her team, she was bringing together different business units, different groups. And we realized, the first discussion, that there's a lot of groundwork we needed to lay before we could actually create a taxonomy. And when I say we, I mean Amanda, because I didn't actually create the taxonomy. And also, then at the end, I will talk a little bit, just briefly, about how your users will reap the benefits of that work and how it looks concretely on a website in a Zoomin platform, just to give you an idea of how we use it at Zoomin. So I'll let Amanda take it away.
Hi, everybody. So the part about the taxonomy that I want to start with is sort of brace yourself, because it can be quite a saga to actually create a global taxonomy. And I don't want that to sound like a bad thing, because at Hunter Douglas, while it was challenging, and it still is challenging, it has been so helpful for us to really get our arms around all of the content that we have. So two of the goals that Hunter Douglas really had with partnering with Zoomin and as a section of that is to create a taxonomy to make the Zoomin software work and surface our content. We had two goals. We wanted to improve our search capabilities for our consumers and our customers, and we wanted to, again, be able to publish XML content that's available to the right people at the right time. We have a lot of content that is highly dependent on role or permission-based access. So in a lot of these presentations about taxonomies or implementations, is that everything is presented in a nice linear storyline, usually where the presenter and their team are the heroes of that saga. And those are awesome presentations. I applaud those presenters and the hard work that they have done. And they do a great job, that there is a clear starting point. What are their challenges? There's a middle of how they implemented, how they installed, what questions they asked. And there's a nice, neat ending where everybody, goes away happy and the empire is saved. So I'm going to head you off. This is really not that kind of a story. My presentation is going to be a little bit more messy, and unlike the narrative timeline, my implementation and my saga for how to create the taxonomy was much more like if you watch Star Wars in the order that they were released, as opposed to the order that they appear in the narrative. So we jumped headfirst into the middle of the story, into the middle of a rebellion, and choose sides and started kind of fighting our way out of this. We had, as Amy introduced, a lot of competing factions. It wasn't just my team as tech docs and technical publications that need to be involved. We quickly realized that focusing only on what tech docs required really left folks like marketing, learning and development, and consumer experience out in the cold. So as we brought those teams in, there was, some conflict there that we had to resolve. As we started implementing Zoomin and looking to build the taxonomy as part of that, we realized that all of the members of our little factions and our little cross-functional teams here really struggled with definitions. So we all sort of knew what a taxonomy is. So we all have the industry definition, but couldn't necessarily apply that to Hunter Douglas specifically. And we also ran into issues like that with content strategy and subject schema. what were all of these things and what did they mean to our individual groups? What did they mean to Hunter Douglas as a global enterprise? And then really specifically, like, even if we define those, like, how is Zoomin as a software implementation going to consume that information? Um, and we really struggled with that. The other challenge that we had is, as a luxury window covering company, all of our orders are custom made. So there are no two orders that are the same that leave our warehouses. And we function much more as a business to business to consumer as opposed to a business to consumer or business to business model. And so what that meant is, again, we really had to look at who had access to what level of, say, training information, which dealers had access to which level of products that we sell. And there was just kind of a lot going on in there. And we were looking at how can we leverage the taxonomy to surface that content? Do we need to cover absolutely everything? And how do we do that? These challenges really kind of sent us spinning and spinning. And my our really key part was, when myself and a member of the consumer experience team were talking in front of Zoomin, and we totally had a blowout arguing about what the taxonomy was and how big it should be and how small it should be, and really having that conversation out in public. Well, we try not to air our dirty laundry in front of implementation partners, really demonstrated how much we were struggling with this. And I suspect that a lot of folks, as they go to do an implementation the size of this or to create a global taxonomy, are really going to have those same kind of really hard conversations. Um, and so we are still we're about 8 months into the implementation of Zoomin and a solid 3 to 4 months into actually writing and providing a taxonomy. And we're still working on it. We are still hashing these things out, not quite on such a large scale. We're now down to smaller details like the types of installers that we're going to provide which content to and which dealers get which product information. So it's a little less global, oh my God, what do I do with this ginormous taxonomy? And a little bit more of, okay, we have a grip on level of information. So how did we get there? And this is where I kind of want to start giving some tips and tricks of how we started to overcome these challenges. And the first is you really need to assemble an all-star team to help you get through this. One thing that I had tried to do in attempting to keep the scope small and focusing only on tech docs was that it really did limit my ability to do my day-to-day workload and build a taxonomy that would work for all of Hunter Douglas. And you want to make sure that you interact with other teams and that you have those other voices so that you know what their needs are. And our first step in really pulling an all-star team together was customer experience hired a fabulous content strategist, Brittany Dunnigan, who really helped pull all of our groups together. We had all individually known we needed some sort of global content governance, but really nobody had the authority to pull these people together. And one of the first things that she did was she held a multi-day content strategy workshop that pulled all of the shareholders together into the same room for several days. Everybody from vice presidents down to senior managers, and other interested parties who were knowledgeable about the issues that we were trying to take on. She had a little bit of luck there in that there were some other high-level Hunter Douglas meetings happening at the same time that she could pull these people all together. But I think that that was really important so that all of the decision makers were in the same room and they could hear and understand what are the content, strategy, concerns, challenges, and goals of all of the teams, because that really allowed us to then drill down and choose a team that was going to manage all of the content. So 100 out of those strategy workshops, we established a content crew. There's sort of a name thrown out in jest, and it has now stuck that if you are a member of the content crew, you have got something invested in what content Hunter Douglas authors, where it is published, and who has access to that. And this has representatives, again, from all of those sort of factions, from marketing to learning and development, customer experience, and our tech docs. At first, the first content crew is really made up of anybody at the really manager level, because it is people with the authority to make the decisions and prioritize the next tasks moving forward. This is the group that would have the ability to bring in resources or change resource allocation to actually make the taxonomy process move forward. At some point, those managers will probably step down and will appoint somebody from their team, a representative that may not have as much authority, but can help with the maintenance of whatever procedures, policies, information models, style guides, whatever comes out of that initial content crew work. The other reason to really have the managers involved is that you really want to be careful and be aware of any of your side quests. So side quests can be great. They are usually fun. They might even be productive. But the problem is that if you start focusing on these side quests, like maybe you need an information model, or maybe you need individual team content strategies, all of that is going to detract from your progress of actually implementing a implementing a taxonomy on a global level. And so if you have managers that have the authority to move resources and to allocate budgets as the first round in your content crew, they can help to address where in your priorities list some of these side quests may actually end up in when you want to work on them. As you're sorting through which side quests to go through, at some point you're probably going to find that you need help. And for us, it was that conversation between me and the consumer experience team member in front of Zoomin of, what is a taxonomy? I had lists of hundreds of tags and headings and searchable fields, and that person wanted like 4. And how we were trying to work out how we define taxonomy and content strategy at Hunter Douglas, and we were just really butting heads. And we're butting heads because neither one of us was really wrong. It was just, how do we bridge those gaps and make that content useful at Hunter Douglas? And so, we reached out first to Zoomin as our implementation partner, and through their training, the suggestion was product version and role is what should define your taxonomy. And I said, okay, that makes sense. I understand it. It feels a little software version-y for me as opposed to manufacturing. But I'm like, okay, I can do this. But we quickly found out that for scope of Hunter Douglas, where we have 30 distinct products, we have 24 or so operating systems, and several dozen design options for how our window coverings can be configured. And the problem with that is, to just have one product and one level of product didn't really make sense. We also ran into the same kind of issues involving a role. For tech docs, the only roles that I really consider are our dealerships, our installers, and our consumers. But learning and development had several levels of installers that they needed to consider when producing training content. And so we quickly realized that product version and role wasn't quite going to work for us. And what we came out with is something, instead of having only 3 characteristics, we ended up with really 7 defining characteristics, including product, operating system, design option, information type. And then the really key for us was to understand that with Zoomin in our taxonomy, and I don't know if other software companies and taxonomies have the functionality, is that we had 2 hidden characteristics for role and location, and hidden in the sense that those 2 characteristics did not show up on our faceted search. Instead, they determined by things like our Salesforce permission and the user's login information. And so that's reaching out to Zoomin and reaching out to other resources online really helped us to kind of make that definition of what taxonomy means at Hunter Douglas. It still sort of functions within the Zoomin suggested option, but it gives us a little bit more information for our users to choose. Maybe they want to start by searching through operating system or information type, or begin their consumer journey that way. And the last really key piece of advice I can give is to really go in and find yourself a guru. And do not be surprised when that guru makes you work hard for it. For Hunter Douglas, this aha breakthrough moment came when we talked to Joe Gelb, who really walked us through how the tags and this hierarchy that we were building in Excel was going to show in the user journey, and how we needed to kind of think about our content in order to get from this is how Hunter Douglas perceives the content to this is how our dealers and consumers are really going to use the content. Right now, Hunter Douglas is really still kind of right here with Luke, trudging through the swamp and really trying to hammer out a solid taxonomy. But with Zoomin, we've really gotten some solid help in that implementation. So while many presentations are going to tell you that the narrative timeline and this very clean story is how they successfully made a taxonomy, I'm here to tell you that was really just not my experience. Things like day-to-day work, shifting priorities, fluctuations in resourcing, along with competing interests, really juggled up how we were able to actually implement the timeline. And I think that we have a clear path forward of how to kind of straighten out where we are. But I suspect that this is from personal experience and chatting with folks who are part of STC. This is the release timeline version of this is really more what an implementation of a taxonomy is going to look like. And that's okay. You're still going to defeat the empire, and you're still going to get your hands around your content. And may the force be with you.
Thank you, Amanda. That was a very entertaining way to present that. So I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about how Zoomin uses the customer's taxonomy, or we call it also a subject scheme, basically what Amanda's team went through was, figuring out literally like on a spreadsheet, what are our different categories, how are customers going to get into the content, and how are they going to be searching. So in the way that manifests in Zoomin's platform is that we have, it helps with findability. So if you're a user, like Amanda said, she has certain types of users who are going to be looking for different, say you're going to look for an installation manual. You want to be able to search specifically for something. I will show a screenshot of how it looks in the wild, but we have search facets that help filter your results. And that's how the taxonomy sort of manifests in real life. We also use those to tag the content and orient the users in the topic. So sometimes, we actually have tags on the page, and then users, if you Google in, you might not know where you are, what type of content, what version. That helps orient you. And then also it allows users to, browse by different aspects. So if you're only interested in certain products, you can, narrow it down. And depending on your tools and your vendor and however you're implementing this, your mileage will vary in how it actually shows up. But it's always helpful to the user to have a organized content that is presented in a way that is natural to them and that makes the content more findable for them. In Zoomin, we also use it for access control. We can personalize the doc experience by hiding certain products. So say Amanda's customers only bought the AllStar. I'm not sure if AllStar is one, sorry.
Yeah.
They've only bought the AllStar line of blinds, then they'll only see, you can set it up, they will only see articles about that, because that personalizes it so they don't have to wade through content about, the Duet line. I'm like a blinds expert now. Okay. And then for restricting access as well. So we did this at ServiceNow, where we could restrict content for certain groups or for internal only using the Zoomin platform by tagging certain content to say this is a pre-release and only certain people can see it. So that's another way as well. So yeah, then I just wanted to show you a little bit how it actually manifests. The way we worked with Amanda and her team is, we actually sit down and we define the tags. We talk about, what are the facets you want to have show up? How do you want your content to be organized? She mentioned that she had Joe Gelb came in to give them advice, and he's our president, Zoomin's president. A lot of you might know him from, he's been in the industry for a long time, and he was able to give them some advice that really help them break through some issues. So I just gave a little example of, this is some of the early work where, how it looks in an Excel spreadsheet. And Amanda's team came up with different headings. And so that if you are in, you're looking for the certain product and you have shades and you have the Duet line, then, you could drill down to that content with this subject scheme with these tags. Then what we actually do, and like I said, your mileage will vary depending on your tools and platforms. But at Zoomin, we help you create a classification map. We help you upload it into your product, into the Zoomin platform, and then it'll apply to your topics. So I'm very much simplifying this, but we try to make it easy for users to create an XML file, upload it from the admin panel. And then you can, your subject scheme is applied to your content, and it makes it easy to manage. Some teams will do some scripting for this or do some automation for this. We have lots of advice we can give about it. And here's just an example from the wild, like I mentioned. MSC Hexagon, they have a doc portal, and I just wanted to give an example of how the tags actually are appearing. They have a lot of products, so for example, you might want to, over here on the left, you have your search facets. So you can narrow down your search to just a certain product or products. Then also the tags below the search results will help orient you and figure out, like, where am I? What kind of doc is this? And then something really cool is we have this clustering feature where, you can say, oh, I don't actually want version .2, I want version .3. And then it'll say it's also available in .3 because that content has been tagged with that information. Yeah, so our key takeaways. Amanda told a lot about her journey and how it wasn't smooth, it wasn't linear. I think that from my experience as well, that's very realistic. A lot of times, we think that we get a directive from above that says build a taxonomy. We need a global taxonomy for our company. It really involves a lot of planning. So be realistic that it'll take some time and it'll be challenging. Be prepared. Plan with your team, figure out, ask around who does somebody, who needs to be involved. Don't involve too many people. And what type of, what are our users looking for? Maybe do some research in advance for card sorting. Usability experts can, help you just determine how customers are actually looking for content. And then be open. I think Amanda, they were very open to help. Like I said, Joe Gelb came and helped them at one of the meetings. And I think, if you have people in your marketing team, they might already have a taxonomy, or they might have a consultant, or leverage what you can on, whoever you have that you can leverage. Maybe your vendor has an expert that they can help you, and find out, learn from experience from other people's experience as well. And then my philosophy is always to start small and then keep iterating. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel or create the perfect taxonomy the very first day. Put something out there, start with a small amount of content, test with users, and just keep iterating, getting feedback from your customers. I think that's less intimidating than having to have it right out of the gate. Yeah, that was all I had for my part.
All right. Well, let's take some questions from the audience then. And I've got a few questions myself. The first question we have is how did the company measure success of the role-based or access-based content? And I think what they're asking is, how do you know that the investment that you made in the taxonomy to provide this kind of content access provided some measurable benefits?
So,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so at least for Hunter Douglas, what we're looking for is to drive down calls to customer service. We have a lot of folks who interact with our content and say, oh, well, it's just easier if I call customer service. So one of the ways that we're going to measure if the taxonomy is working is, can we drive those calls down by a certain percentage? Because that percentage can be translated into time, which can then be translated into dollars.
How do you balance then? I think for the audience members who are curious about what we were just talking about, I think we're talking about call deflection. Is that what you're calling it?
Yeah.
Okay. So deflecting those calls. So my father believes that you owe him customer support on the phone at a certain price point. And his point is that if he paid $8 for something at Big Lots, he's not wasting his time. He's throwing it in the trash. But if he paid $8,000 for it, he doesn't care if you have a good website. He doesn't care if you build an app. None of those things are relevant for him. So he will call because you owe him technical support. And there's a segment of people who believe that. I do not have metrics on that to present today, but I know from other research I've done that tends to be an anecdote. How do you handle the fact that some people just want to call in? And is that a fair metric, or is it just the easiest one to kind of aim at?
Yeah, we have those people all the time.
I mean, they're human, right? It's
they're
natural
human.
for humans.
They're human. And full disclosure, I'm guilty of it too. Sorry for the people
totally.
that are on the website or on the webinar that I've called. I think that's a fair point. I still think that it's always been very hard to measure the value of product documentation in terms of a business case. So it is an easy target to hit. I think you can also, depending on your relationship with your consumers or the folks that are engaging with your content, is to look at maybe how much time they spend searching for things, and if they're finding what they need when they need it. If you can partner with them, might be another way to provide that metric. And again, Hunter Douglas is a little odd in that we are more of a business to business industry and not necessarily a direct to consumer. So we have a little bit more leverage with working with our dealerships to get some of that feedback.
That makes sense too. Is there a way that you could differentiate in the call center who's calling about something? And the reason I ask is in a previous show about call deflection, one of our viewers said, "That's nice. Of course, we should, eliminate as many friction points as possible so it's easier for people to solve their problems. But what happens if I'm measuring call deflection and we also are launching a brand new product at the same time and a bunch of calls are coming into the support center, but I'm not able to deflect those because it's a brand new product and people are calling maybe just because they wonder, things we haven't documented yet about that product. So do you have a way to differentiate what people are calling in about and then compare it to your content improvement efforts?
I believe so. So that gets a little more into where my team partners with consumer experience, who really have all of those numbers. And I don't know exactly how granular we can get in that, but I do know we can determine whether a dealer or a end consumer is and we can determine which product they're calling about. So I would assume there's also some notes in there if we could maybe comb through that to see, oh, well, yeah, we had a spike this month in calls because Duet is launching a new version. Whereas, in that same time period, if we launch the new taxonomy, while calls for a silhouette product that maybe has been on the market for a while, those really drop down because we plugged a gap there.
How were those improvements in the measurements you were making received by management?
So we haven't gotten there yet, to be perfectly honest. It was part of the business case to bring in Zoomin and to do the work required to implement Zoomin as a software company and partner. So the idea that we can do that has been hugely received by our leadership.
That's good and not surprising. I think when they do see what your efforts are, you'll be able to tweak them and make them as valuable as you can for them as well, which is a good strategy I'm aware of. When you say subject scheme, is that the same thing as saying taxonomy? One of our viewers would like to know.
I noticed that I was doing that, and I knew that was going to be confusing. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Basically, I'm trying to stick to taxonomy, but at Zoomin internally, see, I'm doing the thing that I say not to do. We call it a subject scheme. It's basically you're taking your taxonomy and turning it into an XML file that you are uploading. So it's basically the same thing in our world. Sorry about that.
And then at Hunter Douglas, do you use a collaborative taxonomy management system of any kind?
So no, that's one of the problems that we had, is that we didn't have any kind of global taxonomy or a single place to work through one. My team, as tech docs or product documentation, had more of a folder structure that we worked through and applied tags based on that, and including things like we have product families, but quickly realized, customer experience doesn't need that. And really, even our dealers don't think of product families. Like, is it a roller product or a shade? They think more of the individual product. So everything about creating the taxonomy was new to us. And even now, of looking at how, trying to think it through the next step. Let's say we finish a fabulous taxonomy. How do we manage this, and where does it live? Luckily for us, Zoomin has an answer to that, at least to work with their software, but not necessarily Hunter Douglas only.
Sure. Do you think that in the future there's a role for like an auto classifier of some kind, or is the amount of content that you have with and compared to the number of employees you have doable manually?
So as a side project, a separate from our implementation with Zoomin, is we are looking to automate some of our classification and some of our tagging for all of our content, especially as we move from unstructured to structured authoring. And this content management system that we have chosen for that, it does have some automated classifications that we'll start to leverage.
And one of our viewers would like to know which manual or automatic classification approaches were applied to the knowledge base, in the documents in your knowledge base.
A little bit of a trick question because there's so many teams involved, but really it has been a very manual approach, in the sense of so internally we understand that we have we have divisions, we have product families, we have products, operating systems, and design options. And that's just kind of the foundation of our business. So knowing our products, knowing our business, we have been able to manually go in and tag and classify content, even down further when you get into like the tech docs, specifically what is an installation operation versus a repair operation. So all of that right now is manual. And again, utilizing our content management system and some smart tagging options there, I'm hoping to automate some of this, because doing it manually, just in terms of the number of documents we have and thinking about scaling that to the number of content fragments we're going to have, is going to be very, very hard to maintain manually.
Okay, great. Because the follow-up question was, were any of these approaches especially productive or impractical? And I think what I just heard you say was that it may be impractical to continue the beginning approach that you used in order to learn what you needed to learn about taxonomy and content in the future, especially as you grow and scale.
Yeah, and I think, that kind of goes back to the question you asked earlier, Scott, about getting leadership buy-in. I have done a lot of legwork and a lot of education work on what is the value that product documentation brings to the business. I'm not the marketing people. I'm not making billboards. I'm not making sales flyers. I don't have that level of creativity in me. I write standard operating procedures for folks on the manufacturing floor. I stop at turn knob right. And
Yes.
so like
That makes sense.
that's not going to sell luxury window coverings.
No.
And so there is a lot of work, and I think this is a common refrain in technical communications, is how do we demonstrate our value? And that takes a lot of education. It takes educating leadership that, okay, I'm not producing marketing collateral, but I am producing the collateral needed for your dealers to show your consumers what to do, and for our installers to quickly and efficiently install our products. And what that has allowed me to do is to increase my budget to get to a place where I can afford automating some of these tasks, because prior has just been a brute force manual method.
Right. And that's savvy. I think if you can establish a pattern where you're delivering value to the organization, you should exactly be able to get more money and have some more opportunities. And speaking of opportunities, most leaders don't pay for features and benefits. They pay for capabilities. One of our viewers would like to know, what new capabilities has Hunter Douglas been able to develop that they couldn't have been capable of doing as easily before without this investment?
So the big win my team specifically got is the ability to publish our product documentation in a formatted, stylized manner, once we move it to XML content. So we kind of have a couple of things going on. I'm, on one hand, trying to move from unstructured to structured authoring. And as we have made that move, I realized I don't have an output system in place. Zoomin provided my team with that formatted output, and then and simultaneously our customer experience team was looking to improve our search capabilities. And so by having our content produced through Zoomin, we gained Zoomin's improved search capabilities over what we're currently using in Salesforce.
Great. You set me up just perfectly, perhaps by accident, but this is a Zoomin question. So our Zoomin representative might be best to answer this particular question. For viewers that don't know, Zoomin also offers the ability to serve up these answers to customer and prospect questions that are hidden in your documentation and other product content in other places, not just on your own documentation website or in your own products. In fact, they can be served up in online communities in places like Salesforce. One of our viewers asks, is the personalized restricted doc experience, and I think what they're saying is the role-based, permission-based documentation available when you use Zoomin for Salesforce? So could you do the same kind of thing there? It's just in a different place.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And actually, I mean, Hunter Douglas is the app that they're trying is the Zoomin for Salesforce. So yeah, we do have those abilities as well.
And how does that work exactly? What's the mechanism? Is it a plugin or a partner application that connects the systems together?
Yeah, it's a partner application. So we have both for ServiceNow and for Salesforce. For the Salesforce community, the ServiceNow community, we have an application that you can connect. So you go to the marketplace for ServiceNow or for Salesforce, and you can get the app there.
So it's like going to the app store for your phone or something similar, but at a corporate level. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but could you help our audience understand the difference between maybe not the difference, but why would people want to serve up the content inside of Salesforce? It sometimes becomes confusing because of the word sales.
Well, so in some cases, people are using it there's two different experiences we have. The most common experience we have is if people have a Salesforce community. So people they're using Salesforce for their community, and they can also use ServiceNow for their community. Their customers are already going to the community, not necessarily. The name is a little misleading, right? Because it's not just for salespeople; they use it for customers. So the customers coming to the community, they want to search for content. They don't want to have to go to multiple places. And if if someone's already using Salesforce, then that makes a nice integration. The other thing is, and please don't ask me too much about this one because I'm just getting familiar with it. But the other thing is we do have case deflection, which as a former doc manager, I find really exciting. So if someone's in Salesforce and they find the article they need, then they can indicate that it solved their issue, which helps us, give the customers case deflection metrics as well.
Ah, nice.
So yeah, that's a huge benefit as well.
Do we know if this is a kind of a tangential question and you may not know the answer to, do we know if human beings, when we design these systems that say, hey, was this content useful? Do they click the useful button, or is it like a restaurant? They only complain when it's bad on the way out?
To be honest,
do they say, yes, this was helpful, or do they just move on?
In my experience, I would say you don't get as many positives, but we do get a surprising number. So it depends on the customer, but it's pretty balanced.
Oh, that's good. That's good to know. Well, yeah. I'm glad to know that some people are clicking on that. I wonder about that sometimes. One of our viewers would like to ask a question about the Hunter Douglas implementation. How did that team arrive at a taxonomy that balances internal understandings with customer perceptions and assumptions about how to find the topic?
Oh man, that is such a phenomenal question. The short answer is that we argued about it a lot. Many people, strong feelings. I think the professional answer is we really looked at, with the different teams that were coming to the table, with the exception of tech docs, consumer experience and learning and development both had metrics on how their people interacted with their content. Tech docs has not had that. We're a little behind the times. So Tech Docs has relied on the work consumer experience and learning and development has in terms of looking at, links clicked, how many times, what words have been searched. There was some of that information out there. So we looked a little bit at historic use. And we also looked at what have our dealers asked us for. And a couple of those things is right now our customer journey is through Salesforce for our tech docs, and you have to choose the product first and foremost. And you might say, oh, well, yeah, obviously you want to choose the product first. Except if that window covering is 5 years old, can anybody tell me the name of the window covering product that's in their home right now?
Right. Anybody that doesn't work at Hunter Douglas.
Right. Right. Even I have to stop and think about what do I actually have on that window.
Sure.
So we quickly realized that even though we internally think through product first, our dealers and our consumers may look at things like the operating system. So PowerView is one of our leading automated motorized operating systems. That might be a good place for them to start their journey through our content. Our design options, some of them are very obvious. We have top down, bottom up, so that if your shade drops from the top of the window and rises from the bottom of the window, that design. And so our dealers have asked us to create paths into content where they know they want a certain functionality in the product versus knowing they want a certain product to start with.
Excellent. Thank you for those great answers, by the way. We had enough time today in the show in order to cover some in depth, and I know our audience appreciates that. You can tell by the number of questions that came in and the kind of quality questions that we had. So thank you to the audience for asking questions, and thank you to Amy for joining us. Amy, I'm going to ask you to stay on even though you're going to say thank you. Don't hang up. And the same thing for Amanda. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about Zoomin Software in a minute. But first, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you making time to help people understand Zoomin Software and the Hunter Douglas experience.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great working with Amanda and being able to share the experience.
Excellent. And Amanda, thank you for coming and joining us and telling us a little bit about your journey. I really appreciate your transparency and honesty, trying to help people understand what the real situation is. Sometimes these shows get a little fluffed up when marketing people get involved. And so we want to make sure that the viewers get a kind of a realistic picture. And I think you painted that very nicely today. So thank you for doing so.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. And if you would do us just a favor, Amy, and tell us a little bit about Zoomin Software for those folks who don't know very much about it.
Sure. So Zoomin's an intelligent content platform. We basically have a way to bring together all of your types of content across your company. So you might have content from, like we were saying earlier, community. You might have content from different business units. And we have a way to ingest and index content from all different platforms, like, if you're authoring in Dita, if you're authoring in Confluence, we're able to bring all those sources together to make it a seamless experience for your customers. So that it looks like they're getting the content from all the same, person or business unit. It provides a unified source of information. So you don't have to go to multiple places to look for different content. Also, I wanted to mention, because we were talking a little bit earlier about measuring success, we do have an analytics platform that is part of the Zoomin platform, and analytics, it's kind of new. It's been awesome seeing this. As a former doc manager, it's been awesome seeing what customers can find out about their content from the analytics platform. I already mentioned case deflection earlier. That's with the Salesforce app. But with the analytics platform, you can look at all kinds of metrics and the freshness of your content and what people are looking at. And that also helps you build your case for why you're valuable to your company. If your company is asking, why do we need tech docs or any type of docs, it really helps you demonstrate your value by showing these metrics.
I agree 100%. Thank you for sharing that. And if you want to learn a little bit more about Zoomin Software, you can use the attachments button located underneath your webinar viewing panel to open up our document repository where you can click through and land right on the Zoomin Software website, or you can get some content in there provided by them that's available for download. on demand right now today. So thank you for doing that. Point your browser at zoominsoftware.com if you'd like to learn more. And speaking about learning more, we're going to be learning a lot more tomorrow from my friend and our peer and expert in information management, Robert Glushko, who has written a book about teaching children about how to organize. He was challenged to turn his collegiate level science award-winning book called The Discipline of Organizing into something that fifth graders could understand. And he's going to do a show on how that happened and what went on to make it happen and kind of what he learned by trying to turn children into budding content managers. It'll be an interesting show, so don't miss that. We'll also have Swamini Sampath, who is a manager at MathWorks, who manages the technical documentation team. She's going to come and talk to you about how they find and use content metrics, which ones are important, why, and who are they communicating these to. December the 7th, Kevin Nichols on his show, Let's Talk Personalization, will have Vijay Hanamulu as his expert. He will be talking about personalization and digital transformation efforts from a leadership perspective and how you can sell those and the value that they can bring your organization, especially when you're trying to talk to leadership. And December 8th, well, 3 experts come and talk to us about connecting technical communication and learning content together. Felice Banner, Vicky Dill, and Sal Carliner will come and talk about how to bring those teams together. All 3 of them have unique experiences. We've got an academic, a practitioner, and a consultant educator all on the show. You're going to definitely want to show up for that one, especially if you're trying to bring those content pieces together and blend them. And on the next Let's Talk Content Ops show with Rahel Ann Bailey, we're going to be hearing from Adrian Warman about an interesting topic, and I'm not really sure how to describe this one, but he's going to talk about how geometry drives personalization. So I'm just going to leave that there and say, I'm really interested in what that means. But he's got a really great scientific approach about how to use mathematics and personalization together to achieve your goals. And then later that same day, Cruz Saunders will come and talk to us about how companies are connecting content systems together, especially in a decoupled content supply chain. All right. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Scott Abel. I've been the host of your show today. I hope that you enjoyed the show and that you'll come back and visit us again in the future. Don't forget to check out information from our sponsor, Zoomin Software, located in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel. And as a favor, if you would, on the way out the door, give us a rating using our 1 through 5-star rating system to let us know what you thought of the presentation content today. And there's also a little field into which you can type a note if you'd like to give a comment or share something with the presenters. You can do so. You can also use that to share an idea if you've got for an upcoming show. I'd love to know if you've got a topic or a guest you'd like us to invite to be on the show. We'd love to hear your ideas as well. So be well, be safe, keep doing great work. You've been watching How Taxonomy Powers Knowledge Centers with Amanda Patterson and Amy Bowman, brought to you by Zoomin Software and the Content Wrangler. Thanks for joining us. Until then, until we see you again, be well. Bye-bye.